And I didn't know about windows of tolerance. I didn't know about abuse. For me, at that point in time, I didn't really understand how abusive my growing up was because it was the normal and it was happening in all of the households within my family sphere. So I didn't get it at that time. And then I found myself, fast forward a few years later, extremely successful, pushing the limits, not taking care of myself.
When life's visible and hidden battles make you doubt that peace, love, and full-on living are possible, We Win Within brings the proof. Guests crack open their great stories that may overlap with what each of us carries, sharing raw truths, hard-won discoveries, and triumphs that illuminate the road for us all. I'm Hindi Stegman, daughter of Holocaust survivors, speaker, coach, and fellow journeyer in life, inviting you to listen, look inside, and claim the champion already rising in your heart.
All right. So, hi, everybody. My name is Hindi Stegman, and I'm your host for the We Win Within podcast. And today we have a special guest, Jessica Brace. And Jessica is going to tell you her story of how she got from point A to point B or to point Z or wherever she takes us. So, hi, Jess. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
So, where do you want to start?
Oh, wow. That's a hot topic for sure, literally. Um, yeah, I think I'll just start like your origin because I think that not only is like your upbringing and your core, you know, what creates your whole basis of where you are now. I mean, it's your history, but this is also your ancestral history, and all of that and how it ties into it and what your journey is in your path. So I always start with, where I'm from. Like I grew up in a super small town, 3 miles long, 1 mile wide, stuck out in the middle of the ocean, very, very humble. My family is all entrepreneurs or literally fishermen owning commercial fishing boats. So I grew up really neat, but there was, the outside was beautiful and the beach and the picturesque and success. And then the inside for my family was very dark and shifting. There's a tremendous amount of mental illness on both sides of my family, father and mother, all the way through generations. I only knew through my great grandparents, and it was very obvious, the neurodiversity, the mental illness, and the addictions that occurred in my family. And, growing up in that environment, you tend to have this expanded tolerance window, which I learned about much later in my life because my normal wasn't normal growing up. And, my tolerance for what was abusive and what was not, and what was normal and what was not, was so wide because of how I grew up. And as I got older and learned things, it was a revelation for me on like how to change myself in a way and understand what those limitations were and actually what quote unquote what normal was. But it took a lot to get here, and quite the journey, trial, tribulation, fire, phoenix, you name it all. I've been through that experience. My limited understanding of personal development is you turn 18 and you get the hell out. That was what I was told, when I shared about the extensive abuse in my childhood. I was told, well, you're almost 18, you're 16, just shut your mouth, keep your head down. And when you're 18, you can get out and do whatever you want. So I held on to this thread of, well, someday magically I'm going to turn 18 and I'm going to go to college and everything is going to be amazing and beautiful. And I zip off to college, go to a scholarship, one of the best schools in the country for business, meet this gorgeous man that I dated for 5 years. And, I found myself depressed, sick, suicidal, almost engaged, almost married to a person who was constantly cheating on me and was abusing me, drinking excessively because I lived in a sorority house and all of these things. And that was my first time that I was like, I didn't really escape anything. I was still trying to run and escape, and I was masking that I was okay and pretending that I wasn't like them and pretending that everything was great. And it was eating me to the point where I couldn't even get up anymore. So that was my first self rescue, where I literally sold everything, disconnected from everybody that wasn't healthy for me, which was almost everybody at that point. And I moved to a whole nother state. I moved from Massachusetts to Florida on my own and kind of rebooted. And then a funny thing happens. You reboot and then you start over and everything's great and the masks come back and you're fine and you're happy and you're joyous and life goes on. And I did it. I rescued myself and I got myself out. And then bam, a few years go by and you realize that you're in the same situation again. And I didn't know about windows of tolerance. I didn't know about abuse. For me, at that point in time, I didn't really understand how abusive my growing up was because it was the normal and it was happening in all of the households within my family sphere. So I didn't get it at that time. And then I found myself, fast forward a few years later, extremely successful, pushing the limits, not taking care of myself, running a very successful business in a marriage that was very long term. And I ended up at a Tony Robbins event. And it was on this whole whim of um my friend that I met from the chamber had just started his massage business, and this was 17, 18 years ago. And, he said, hey, I've got this speaker coming in from the Tony Robbins world, and he's going to be doing this business presentation at my office, and it's free. And I'm just inviting some of my friends over to come and check this out. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that sounds good. And he's going to talk about your mindset and your development and all these things. And I was like, oh, well, that sounds cool. It's free, right? And he's like, yeah, it's free. He's like, just come over, we'll hang out. So I'm like networking opportunity, business builder kind of thing. So I roll into this meeting. My husband didn't want to go. He said that kind of stuff is dumb. And I showed up and the speaker was so good. This guy, Oscar, was like, and then your mind is this and that. And my world of this started to open just a little tiny bit in that one, 90-minute presentation of like, what else is possible? And, that's my mantra today. Like anything that happens, whether it's good and it's something that I expected, or if it's something that I did not expect, it's still good. I've come to that point in my realization that it's all good and it's all happening for you. But, it was like, what else is possible started to bloom. Like a seed was planted in that one time. And, Oscar offered an opportunity to go to a Tony Robbins event and you had to buy a ticket and all of that. And I went home and spoke to my husband, then husband, about it. And he was like, no, I'm not sitting in a room freezing cold talking to some weird big guy that you see on infomercials. And what is the point of that? I'd rather go on a cruise. We saved our money for a cruise. I'm not going. Okay. Oscar calls again, lowers the price, tells me some more about it, coaches me through a little bit on the phone. I'm like, I really felt this nudge, like right here in my heart space, in my gut, in my head, couldn't stop thinking about, kept coming back again and again. Well, what if I went to this seminar? What if I just went without him? What if I just did this? And, I was like, So then another few weeks went by. Oscar calls again. He's like, hey, are you coming or not? We're getting close to the event. And I'm like, he doesn't want to go and this and that. He lowers the price again. And I'm like, And it was a really good offer. And I was like, and he's like, it's 2 for, you really have to bring your significant other with you because you want to grow in tandem or you'll grow apart. And it's really important that you guys, do this work together, which totally understood. And so I bought the ticket on a credit card. And my now ex-husband was like furious. Like, no, I'm not going. How could you do this? We got in a huge fight. He calls the Tony Robbins company, asks for his money back. And they're like, well, we do give a full refund, but you have to come to the first full day of the event. On the second day at noon, you can come to the customer service desk, turn in your workbook, and we will give you a full refund, no questions asked. So now he's mad, like beyond mad with me that we have to go to this for a day and waste our time and blah, blah, blah. So we go and we show up and I'm sitting there. I love it. I'm like, wow, like every moment is like, what, whoa, I didn't know that. Oh my gosh. And we're doing this whole thing and we're preparing for a fire walk and we're going to walk barefoot on fire. And I'm like, no, I'll just watch. I'm just going to watch. I'm not going to do this crazy, like culty guru, drink the Kool-Aid kind of stuff. I'll just watch these people do this whole circus act, but I really am enjoying the workbook part of it. So then they split us and you had to work on your fears. And it was like almost like a self-hypnosis kind of experience where you're working and you're journaling and you're doing all these things. And then you write in your book, you know, you list out what your fears are as you're working through and preparing for this big thing that they kept talking about, the firewalk, woohoo, you know. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll just work on it. And so we did the exercise, closed the book, didn't really look at it. We're continuing on. The seminar is like really fast paced learning, like one thing after another. And it's like, aha, aha, aha. Like you're almost exhausted of ahas just in the first hour. I mean, it's incredible. And this was all new. Like I didn't understand at that point. I had been told by my family that you are what you are and you are what you came from. And the things that have happened to you broke you and you'll never be unbroken. And, you know, that was the belief of my family that I was carrying with me, that there was something wrong with me because I grew up in such an abusive environment, that I was never going to be good or okay, that I was always going to be broken. And that was going to carry in me forever until the day that I die. And so I learned in this seminar that your past does not equal your future. And that was really locked in. And it was such a big aha, like brain moment of like, wait a minute, you're my past. So all this over here doesn't have to come over here with me. And as I'm working through that and everything else, and like I'm having this like first, like when they call it breakdown to breakthrough moment, and I'm really embodying and processing this new thought into my brain. I just happened to pick up my workbook and was like, well, what is it that I fear? And so I picked up my workbook and I went back to that session. And my number one fear that I wrote in my workbook was that I was afraid of being a bad parent, of carrying my past and giving it to my children because I was broken. And I was like, wait a minute, past is not equal to future. I don't have to live with what they told me or what they did to me, or those experiences don't have to define me anymore. It's a choice. And so my brain is like on hyperdrive. And I look at my husband, I'm like, hey, I'm like, what'd you happen to write in your journal? He's like, I don't know. He's like, it's kind of weird. I don't even remember. And I'm like, well, let's open it up. I'm like, this is mine. And he, very first thing on the list, fear of being a bad parent. And no,
Wow.
him and I, we were married because we were trauma bonded, and that we both grew up in heavily alcoholic, abusive, dysfunctional households. And our trauma bond in our relationship was that we both so did not want to be like our parents. And that's what actually brought us together in our relationship, was that we were both like, we're just not going to be like them, and we're just not going to, we're going to stay away from them and do our own thing and be who we are. Little did I know. So as we go through that experience, I realized that him and I had been married for 5 years, together for 10, but at that point, but in the 5 years that we were married is because we had decided that we wanted a child. And for 5 years of my marriage, we had been trying to conceive and there was no child. And the doctor said everything was great, just keep trying, you know, it'll happen, what'll happen. And I'm like 35 at this point. And I'm like, well, you know, I'm starting to get a little older. I'm not really sure what's going on. Um, and I realized in that moment that if my biggest fear was being a bad parent, how could that affect me physiologically with my thoughts? So your thoughts create your reality. Second big, like brain blow all in one day. You know, it was just like so overwhelming. And I had been in years of talk therapy and all these things. And this one day, just the first day of this event, literally shifted me forever. So we went through, I did the firewalk, amazing experience, but that showed me in my nervous system, in my core, the question of what else is possible, in that if I can walk on fire with my bare feet and be fine, what else am I capable of? Or what else have I been telling myself that I can't do, but I really can? And that just those three things, you know, what else is possible? I'm possible. What your past is not equal to your future, and you know, your fears create your reality. So those three things in one day was like life changing. Within 2 months, I was expecting my first son, Brennan, who is now going to be 16 in a couple weeks. And, you know, that changed my life forever in such a way. And then, you know, fast forward a year and a half later, my baby's born. Tony Robbins circles back to Florida, and you can go as a volunteer once you graduate. And I'm like, I want to be with these people. My life has radically changed, in a year and a half, and I want to come back. So I signed up as a volunteer through a random chain of events, which if you want to know the whole story, I'll be happy to share with you later for the condensedness of this, because I promise you there is way more good stuff coming in this story. But I ended up being a volunteer, and on my very first day was assigned backstage as the assistant to the assistant to the assistant to the assistant of Mr. Robbins. So I can even tell you that only consisted of me sitting backstage in the freezing cold in the dark and being on call during the event. So it wasn't very exciting. But through a random, and I don't say random in a light way, we use the word random, but it's actually divine interventions and things that occurred. I ended up at the end of that 3-day event sitting down with Mrs. Robbins and being offered a job as their backstage manager, and being asked if I could fly out to Los Angeles in 2 weeks to start training for this amazing opportunity, which of course I said yes. And that translated into the next 7 years that I traveled with them all over and supported them at events and just grew. One event, one day, 3 life-changing thought patterns were integrated within me. You can imagine what happened in 7 years. So as I went through that journey in those 7 years, I changed a lot. And my husband, he came with me and he changed as well, but some things didn't change. And we really grew apart. And, I became aware of what my needs were and that it was okay to ask for things and that I didn't have to do everything. And he went more within and became dark. And so I found myself at the end of this 7-year incredible journey, facing a situation where my marriage wasn't working. My husband had now progressed into a very severe mental illness. That was above and beyond. There was no drugs or alcohol involved, but I, was sitting with my children in a firsthand seat of a human being, a man that I was in love with, the father of my children, completely unraveling his sanity. And I had access through the Tony Robbins environment with the best of the best in the world to help him and support him. And I learned during this experience that no matter what resources are available, if someone doesn't want to do the work, there's nothing that you can do. And this is one of the biggest and hardest lessons of my life, because growing up in an alcoholic environment in the way that I did, I was the people pleaser. I was, let me help everybody. Everything is figure outable. Don't rock the boat. I'm the one who was the calm in the storm, who got things done, made sure everyone was okay, because my safety for my life required me to make sure everyone stayed calm, because when they exploded, I was not safe in my life. So now I'm in this situation where I'm married to a man in my home with 2 very small children at home. One was a newborn, and it was unsafe. And so I sought support and encouraged him for support, and it didn't. And it came down to an intervention where, he was given a choice to move out and get help, and he could no longer stay in our home, or I was going to leave. I wasn't telling him I was going to leave at that point, but I was telling him that if he went out and got support, but if he chose not to get help for himself, then I needed to leave and this marriage needed to end. Unfortunately, that night was the biggest pivotal moment of my life. We went to bed not speaking, which wasn't unusual at that time. I woke up the next morning at 5 a.m. to find him in the closet getting dressed. And I asked him, "What are you doing?" And he's like, in a very strange voice, which startled me, he said, "I'm getting shit done." And I'm like, okay, whatever that means. I really don't want a confrontation. It's 5 a.m. I didn't really sleep well. I just don't need this right now. So I let him leave the room, and I heard the garage door open and the garage door close. And I'm like, 5 a.m., Dunkin' Donuts opens at 5. He must be going to get his coffee. I didn't really think anything of it. I got up, used the restroom. And when I went to open my bedroom door, it was blocked. It was being held by something on the other side, and I couldn't quite open the door. So I had to forcefully open the door, and I stepped out onto the loft, in my townhouse on the second floor, and the loft was where his office was, and everything was gone. The computers, everything was thrown on the floor, it was a mess, but all of his stuff was gone. And I just was like, something's not right. And my immediate thought was, where are my children and are they okay? Because I had several experiences with him where my children were unsafe with him and he had made threats. And I was very concerned, ran to my children's room. They were asleep. Their room was ransacked. Their piggy bank was broken on the floor, and all, even the pennies from their piggy bank was gone. There was just ransacked the whole house. My office door was bolted shut. I ripped open the door. Everything from my business was gone. My computers, my video equipment, my files, everything had been removed. I went to run to grab my phone and realized that my phone was gone, my safe was open, my jewelry was gone, my credit cards were gone, my passports were gone. Everything for my whole life was removed from my house. I went to try and ask someone for help because I was very concerned for his mental health, that state. And I realized that he had ripped the cables for the internet out of the walls and had cut them. And so I had no way to contact anyone. And it's now like 6 a.m. and I'm not really sure what to do. So I went to the fire department across the street and asked for help. And the police came. And what they said is that because we were married, him taking all of these things and disappearing wasn't a crime because we were married and it's half his. So that was more of a family issue than a crime. And because he hadn't made a threat against me or had hit me, there wasn't a crime there and there was nothing they could do to help me. And so they sent me on my way with 2 little children back to my house. I knew something wasn't right, and I just knew something was really wrong. And I went to my clubhouse for my apartment complex and used the computers there and was logging in to try and contact people because without my phone, I didn't have people's phone numbers. And it was a holiday weekend. So everything was closed because it was a holiday Monday. And as I called someone on Skype because their number was in there, I realized that it disconnected me and it said your password has been changed, and I couldn't log back into my Skype. And then I logged into Facebook and my password was changed. And then I tried to log into my bank account and I couldn't get in. And that's when I realized that I was being tracked somehow and that something was really wrong in a bad, bad, bad way. So I took my children in a stroller and we ran to the police station, and I begged them to let me stay in the police station until I could call for help, which took hours and hours and hours for me to be able to reach people because it was a holiday weekend and it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. Um, a friend picked me up, drove me 3 hours back to her house. No word of him, nothing. I didn't know what was going on. It was very terrifying. The next day, someone calls me and says, "Hey, I drove by your house, and normally I don't go this way. And there's a lot of police cars and fire trucks surrounding your house." And I froze. And I told her what happened and that he was missing. And I was very concerned. And she said, "Do you want me to drive by?" And we were on FaceTime. And so she drove into my neighborhood, and I could see on the FaceTime camera that she passed the fire trucks and the police and the lights and the sirens, and people were running back and forth. And she's like, "Oh my God." And she froze. And on the screen was my new car that I just bought sitting in front of my house, completely engulfed in flames.
Wow.
And I looked at that, and my very first thought was, "Dear God," and I shrieked, "Dear God, please tell me he's not inside that car." And my children, I didn't know this was going to happen. My children were there. And sadly, they saw that and they started crying. "Please tell me daddy's not in that car. What is daddy doing? What is wrong with this car?" What's like very, it was so confusing. He wasn't in the vehicle, but he was missing still. I did speak with a police officer on FaceTime, and they said that witnesses reported that he was running down the sidewalk and that they didn't know where he went to, but they could see that someone was watching them from the second story window behind a curtain. But when they knocked on the door, they couldn't access. No one would answer the door. And they were trying his cell phone, but there was no answer. And management was trying my cell phone. And I explained he took my cell phone and I had no way to communicate. So it then turned into SWAT teams and police and trying to get him to come out of the house. We went all the way to a judge at like 11 o'clock at night who made a determination that in the state of Florida, because there was no direct threat towards me, because they had to do the forensic on the car before they could charge him with anything, with a crime or a potential crime, or even say that he was a suspect, because he hadn't threatened me and there was no domestic violence charges, because he hadn't come out of the house and he had not responded, and that I was not home at the time, that it was not a police situation, and the judge said that they could leave. So the
Wow.
police asked me at that time that the law would change if I came home with my
Oh my,
children and stepped onto the property.
wow.
And they assured me they would protect me. And I was 3 hours away in a complete, utter PTSD like breakdown of like, I don't even know what's going on in my life right now. And I said no, and I declined. And they said, well, if you don't come here, then we're going to pack up our things and we're going to leave, and you're on your own. And that's what happened. They literally packed up and left him in the house. Most likely armed was the suspicion at this point. Clearly deranged and not well. And A friend came over who was a minister. I had called her and was like, please go to my house. So she was standing by working with the police, trying to get him to communicate. Everybody left, and it was just her. She was able to get him out of the house and get him to come to her house. And that was like a 4 hour talk with him. He was not well at all, completely delusional and not himself, nothing like I had ever seen in a person. And she took him to her house. I He admitted that he had guns. He had stolen the weapons from his father. And um, yeah, it was a mess and a total mess. So I went there the next morning while he was at a friend's. I had to have the police come with me for a escort into my own home. They went into my home, guns drawn, going through my whole house, room by room. He wrote all over the walls. He created more damage in the home. He destroyed more of our personal belongings, smashed photos, ruined jewelry, ripped furniture, did all kinds of things while he was in there. But most importantly, they found the weapons that he had, and the police brought them down. And this police officer came down the stairs, and I'm holding my baby in my arms, and my little one, who was just 7 years old at the time, is standing next to me, holding on to me, and we're terrified. And the police officer comes down the stairs, and he's holding a gun in an evidence bag, and he's holding another bag with bullets. And he says, do you recognize this? And I'm like, no, sir, we never had weapons in our house. I don't believe in them. I have small children. It's dangerous. I'm like, we don't have anything in our house like that. And he's like, do you know where these came from? And I said, I don't know. I do know that his parents have a lot of weapons. They're hunters in his family, so perhaps it came from there, but I don't know. And he was like, oh, he's like, well, ma'am. And he looked me in the face and he came very close to me and he said, ma'am, he's like, there's 16 bullets. And I'm like, yes, sir. I don't understand. I wouldn't understand what he was saying at the time. And I just kind of looked at him and was like, okay, like, I don't know. And he came a little closer and he goes, ma'am, he's like, there's 16 bullets. And I still wasn't registering with me. I was just so distraught. And I was like, and I just repeated after him, okay, 16 bullets. Like, I don't know what you're trying to say to me. And he gets a little closer and he looks at my son. He looks at the baby in my arms, and a tear forms in his eye. And he looks at me. He goes, ma'am, he's like, there's 16 bullets. You don't need 16 bullets to kill yourself. And that's when it registered to me and how much danger I was in. And it didn't register with me that someone you could be married to for 18 years would go to this level of hate towards you. Um, and at that moment, I knew that I needed to go and I needed to run. And he looked at me and he said, I'm going to stay here and I can't help you pack, but I can stay here until you pack. And he's like, you have 15 minutes. And he said, I suggest that you pack everything that you need that you can carry with you today. And I want you to pack as if you're never coming back here. Because if you do come back here, I guarantee that you're going to survive. And so
Wow.
I grabbed whatever rolling suitcases we had, one for each of us, put it in the car, and I left my home. That started a long journey of um, my husband being arrested for the car fire. He actually called Geico and tried to make a claim that the car spontaneously combusted. And then in the middle of explaining to them, he actually confessed that he set the car on fire and it was recorded. So he was arrested immediately once Geico turned that into the police. It was embarrassing. It was on the news. It was in the newspapers. It was on the internet. People were sharing it and passing it around. Um, it was hard. It was really hard. And he was Baker acted and released. He was diagnosed with all kinds of mental illnesses, and he was put out on charges. He was bailed out, so he didn't have to stay in jail for more than a few days, pending his trial for a felony. The state was bringing charges against him, several charges for public endangerment, fire, arson, like all kinds of things. And I had to completely separate and cut off contact and file lots of restraining orders and lots of court. That 1 year was the hardest year of my life. He stalked me. He threatened me. He threatened my friends. He threatened my business. I wasn't able to work online. If I had an event, I work as a speaker. If I had an event, he would threaten that he would show up at the event. He kept finding out where I was moving to. I had to go into a witness protection program and change my name and hide. He would constantly find out where I was. He would shut off my electricity. He would cancel my credit cards. He called the IRS and reported me for fraud. He called DCF and reported me for child abuse. He called my clients and told them lies about me and that they shouldn't work with me anymore. I mean, everything that he could think of in his mind to destroy me, he tried. Opened up credit cards with my social security number and maxed them out. You name it. It was a long year, a very long year. I didn't know if I was going to make it. I slept every night with weapons hidden all over my room. My children slept in the bed with me. I never let them more than an arm's length for an entire year. Even when I showered, I would bring toys, special toys that I had in the bedroom, in the bathroom, and they would sit on the bathroom floor while I showered as quickly as possible. Um, I didn't eat right. I didn't sleep right. And within that year, I developed severe complex PTSD. Um, it was hard, but I survived. But exactly almost 1 year to the date, he was February 13th, a year later, just a few days short, 1 week shy of exactly a year. He had posted something online that was disturbing. And people called me when they saw it and they said, hide, he's coming for you. Did you see the video he posted? And he posted this video of him ranting about how awful I was and how I did this to him and how much he hated me. And then he started ranting about all kinds of stuff with politics and Superman. And then he went delusional and started speaking in gibberish. And then the video ended and nobody knew where he was or anything. So I went into deep hiding um, and had to relocate. And with my kids, it was a hairy couple of days. Then I received a call from the police. And he asked me to come to Ocala, and I was in West Palm. And I said, why? And he said, well, I can't tell you until you get here. And I said, is it involving, my husband, Daniel Brace? And he said, yes. And he's like, but we need you to come here. And I said, look, I'm on very limited funds. I live in West Palm. I have 2 children. This man has made my life a living hell for the last couple of years. And I really don't want to be anywhere near the vicinity of where he is. He's dangerous. And can you just tell me over the phone? And he's like, was very insistent that I came there. And I was like, look, I don't even have the gas money and the tolls to come there right now. I'm like, I don't know what it is or what he's done. If he's arrested, I'm glad because he should not be out on the street. And he said, man, I'm sorry to tell you, but we found him dead via
Wow.
suicide. And my response was relief and sadness for my children. But it was relief for me. because in that moment, I knew that I was safe. In my whole entire life, everything I had done to that point, every motion, every relationship, every movement, everything that I had done was because I was always fighting for my safety. And
Wow.
and I didn't realize until that moment. I was safe in that moment. I didn't realize that my entire life since I was born was fight or flight and constantly seeking safety and reassurance and doing everything that I could to calm. And, it went on. I had to pick up the pieces. Like, how do you even pick up the pieces from that? We moved out of West Palm because we just didn't want to be reminded of that space. And we relocated to Orlando, and I was in therapy and EMDR and NLP and hypnosis and therapy and trauma therapy and talk therapy, very, very extensive healing program because I knew that your past doesn't equal your future. I knew that there was behaviors within me that were ingrained in me as a child that could be changed so that my future could change and the future of my children could change. So I became just almost like just as much as I needed oxygen, I needed to find what was going to make me work because my life and my children's life depended on it. So I just grabbed whatever I could and was trying all of these things. And it was hard. And some things were better. And they were, when you have a recipe for your healing, it's the spices. So it's like what little bit of dash of cinnamon, a little bit of salt, all these things, they kind of come together to make this recipe of you. And so all of those things, 52 sessions of EMDR, counseling, therapy, hypnosis, they all help me to move me along to shape, my recipe for healing. And what really was the pivot point for me is I found myself on I-4 in Orlando. And with all these therapies and everything, as I'm driving on I-4, 80 miles an hour, I was in autopilot. Like my brain wasn't functioning at all. I was completely overwhelmed all the time, really stressed out. I found that the hood of my car, as I became into awareness, the hood of my car was actually starting to go under the trailer of an 18-wheeler at 80 miles an hour. And I just woke up, whether my angels were like slap me and wake me up out of my fog. I don't know what happened that made me realize where I was in that moment. But I jerked the wheel, went off into the grass, slammed on the brakes, skid through the grass, and I sat there and cried for what felt like hours. I don't even know how long it was. And I was like, I knew that I had to do something, but I didn't know what because I felt like I was already doing all the things and I had tried all the things and done all the things. And but I knew that I was gonna die if I didn't find something. Like I knew that I needed it even more so than oxygen at that point. And I just begged and begged and begged. And I tried to meditate, I tried to pray, I tried all these things, but my brain was just so gone at that point. I didn't even remember if I brushed my teeth or not. Like my short-term memory was fried. When I had conversations with people, it would take me forever to remember where I was in conversations. It was hard. I couldn't work. I had two children to take care of. And I slowly got a little better and a little better, and I kept working at it and working at it until I went to a business conference that I was invited to. And during that conference, I went to like a retreat afterwards, and it was for video marketing, which was the industry that I worked in at the time. And this guy said to me, oh, he's like, I do breath work and you can come and try it out on the couch at 6 o'clock. Just meet us here in the living room and you guys can see what I do. And it was like a think tank. We were all helping each other with marketing ideas and strategies, which I love. And I was like, great, I'll try it. I could, try some meditation. And I used to live next to an ashram and I used to go to box breathing and fire breathing and all these things. It's going to be good. I'll relax. Maybe it'll help me a little bit. So I go and he's like, lay down on the couch. Here's an eye mask. Close your eyes. I'm going to play a soundtrack and I'm going to guide you with my voice. And you need to breathe in this pattern with no breaths through your mouth really fast. And we're going to increase your oxygen. And it's going to be really good for you. And it was like really short. Or probably was longer, but that's all I remember because I was like, okay, whatever, what are we doing here? And I started breathing in that way. And within a few minutes, my mind was distracting me. I have ADHD and PTSD. So my mind was all over the place, bouncing and that. And I just remember going, just focus on your breath. He said, just focus on your breath. So I was like, in, out. And I was saying it over and over again, in, out, in, out. And I'm doing the breathing. And about 15 minutes in, I noticed that I felt like I was floating, and I started to move like I was in a wave, and I could actually feel my body swaying as I'm laying on the couch. And I'm like, wow, I don't know what this is, but this feels kind of good. And I started to get a little panicky about what's going on here. Why do I feel so floaty and kind of out there, but clarity and floaty, which was a whole new experience for me. So I keep breathing, keep breathing. And then I noticed something that happened to me, in that there was silence in my head. And I had never in my life experienced silence in my head. So this first time for me was actually unnerving, and I was very uncomfortable. Like, what is this doing to me? Why is there no voices in my head? Why is the people committee not telling me to distract me with all of these things? And why am I just sitting here with myself? What is going on? And why is it so quiet? And then I was like, but this feels really good. And I just was, felt at that moment to keep going and just allow the process. And I did, and I kept breathing. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting in a room, all white, and my ex deceased husband walks in to this room, and it was real. It was real. And we held hands and we cried, and we had this conversation, the conversation of, I'm so sorry. This should have ended differently. And I am so sorry that it is this way. And we talked a lot, and it felt like hours, but it really wasn't. When you're in that dream awake state that I know about now and the deep theta, a lot can happen in your healing and your processing. And I left that white room at peace, and he was at peace, and I was at peace, and I had a deep understanding of the why. And I was settled with it, and
Wow.
I felt safe, which
Wow.
was such a huge thing for me. And at the end of that session, when he brought us back into the room, I was aware that my body was moving and shaking, and my legs were going up and down, and all of these things. But I knew in my heart and my core that I needed to do that. I needed to let it go. And I didn't care at that point what all the other people in the room, if they saw me or anything. And he came over to me and he goes, that was quite a journey for you. And I was like, indeed, I really have no words right now. And he's like, of course, go rest, which is very similar to an experience that I had with you, Hindi, about just don't use your words right now, go and rest. And I did. And then the next morning at breakfast, I had, the ego male guys be like, oh, looks like you had quite the time on your journey. And they were like mocking me for the experience, but I didn't care, because that night there was something that happened to me in that first sleep after such a deep session. I could feel my body changing inside my brain, inside my cells, almost like, and it was rewiring, which I understand and know now, but I physically felt it as I was sleeping. And I noticed when I woke up the next morning that I was at peace. And there was this difference in me, in my gravity. And I had never experienced that before. And as time went on, and we're 4 years out, I am 4 years out now from that first breathwork experience. But as time went on, what I realized is that my startle reflex that I had since a child, when someone comes behind you or a loud noise or something like that, was no longer there. That 1 hour session of this funky breathing, floaty thing, twisting all over the couch and contorting my body, and just really allowing myself to let go and trust the process, had removed my startle reflex that I had since birth. I was 40 something years old. I was in my mid 40s at the time. And, it took that long for the
That
rest of
sounds so
to fake.
amazing. That
It
breath,
was.
the
Yeah.
breath.
Yes, yes. And now I understand the science of it and the why, which is like, I'm such a geek about the nervous system now, because there was part of me at that point, before the girl that breathed on that couch that day, there was a part of me that wanted to get better, but there was a part of me that also believed that I couldn't restructure my cells, and I couldn't restructure my operating system fully and completely without a massive amount of work and therapy. And I had this idea that I was in my mid 40s and maybe by my 80s, when I get ready to move into another realm, I may be almost complete. And I had to work at it and do all these things. And that 1 hour changed me so much. It sent me on a whole different path because I was completely different. My everything, like the only way to describe it for me in my words is that my gravity changed. So
Wow.
the way that I walked on the earth and I moved and I experienced things was a different sense of gravity. And it was good. So I started seeking someone. I asked the guy to work with him, and he said that he has only a 3 month program and it's $10,000 if you want to work with him. And that's the only thing that he offers, which was out of my realm for budget at the time. So I went online and I started searching and I tried many, many different breathwork sessions until I found someone almost a year later who did something similar. And I started doing his sessions online. About a few months after I started working with him in groups, he would have 300, 400 people on a Zoom and guiding these breathwork sessions. He offered a coaching program to train and become certified in his method. And I applied, and it was $10,000. And I didn't have $10,000. And the salesperson asked me what my why was. And I told him the highlights of my story. And I'm like, this is my why. I feel like I need to share this with people. And they gave me a scholarship, 100% scholarship. And I trained with them. I have several certifications from them now. And that changed my life. And now, fast forward, November will be 3 years since I've been certified. I've worked with over 1,500 people all over the world, all ages, all disciplines, even entire families have come to work and experience this breath work. And I feel like I'm grounded and safe in my mission to show people that they are possible, that you can do this one breath at a time, that from the absolute worst situation where you can't even get yourself up off the floor to take care of yourself, you can turn it around. And it really can be as easy as one breath at a time and just believing that it can be one breath at a time. So that's what I'm here for. My company motto is kind of harsh for some people, and they may not understand it, but I've really tried to live my life under the premise that suffering is optional, that there is a choice, and people feel like they've reached the limit of what their choices are and they've done everything and that possibly could, and they've listened and they've studied and they've taken courses and they've exhausted their bank accounts doing all the things. And you may think that, but the recipe that you need for you, and it may be breath work and it may not, is that there's that one little thing, there's that one little shift like I had, and it's waiting for you. But you just got to keep going. Just keep going. And even there was moments in my life, people in AA and recovery are like one day at a time. And I used to say one breath at a time. I am living one breath at a time. I can't even put my brain around what the rest of my day is right now. I can just do one breath at a time. And it's really funny that I would say that all the time. And then my breath was actually what saved me.
That is so amazing, Jess. And just in conclusion, um, let's bring your children in for a second.
Yes,
Are they breathing? Have
they
you taught
are.
them to breathe? Are you now the mother? Are you feeling that you take ownership, that you are the mother that you want to be, that you are passing on this beautiful, loving, nurturing energy to your kids so that they can pass that on as well?
They are. So, my children saw a lot that no one should ever see. And, they also saw a lot of things that everybody should see. Like my oldest grew up literally traveling to Tony Robbins events for 7 years. And, they go to a different kind of school. They are both neurodiverse, both diagnosed with autism, with Asperger's. So, their life has challenges above and beyond what happened in their family unit and all of that. And so we always integrate everything in, and they do breathe. and they've walked on fire and broken glass, and they've done all the things to know that they are possible within. My oldest, I get constant feedback from his school that he's a leader, that he supports the other students. I can hear his conversations with his friends, and he's like, well, what if you think about it in this way? It doesn't have to be so like the mindset work that they hear me. I'm in the car and I'm listening to my audiobooks when we drive. I have tapes on in the background. Esther Hicks' YouTube channel plays in the background while I'm cleaning and studying, and all of these things. All of that wisdom osmosisly has transferred to my kids, and especially in that they see me, and they see me that I never quit, and that if I try something and it doesn't go the way that I expected, that I don't stop. I just find something else and I keep going until it works. Last year was my 50th birthday, August 10th, almost a year. I'll be 51 in a couple of weeks. And it was a breaking point for me in that I was like, you know what? I'm not 40. I'm like half done here. I don't know what's coming next, but where am I at? And I realized with all the work that I did and the breath work and everything else that I had reached a point where I was at peace with everything that people had done to me. And I had just absolute 100% peace all around that. And I was good with it, and fully embodied all of it, and had learned that there was good that came from that had been gifts to me, imparted to me from that experience. But then the question that came in my meditation around this was, I am good with all the things that people had done to me, but am I good with the things that I am doing to me?
Oh, wow.
And I cried a lot, and I went dark, and I felt like I was cracking into a million pieces again, because it was like, where am I at? What am I doing to myself? Am I still allowing relationships? Am I still people pleasing? I was very overweight. I was 345 pounds.
Oh, my goodness.
And, I was working and doing my thing and not taking care of myself. I was hurting me and being like the leader. And I was like, if you want to lead, if you want to be the example, and you survived all these things and you did all these things and you're good with it and you processed it and embodied it and you're at peace with it, but where are you with yourself? And what do you need to do? Who do you need to be this person that you know that you are in your core, and how are you going to show up for yourself? And that changed everything for me. I went on a journey asking for help. I created breathwork journeys on my own for my own self-care, based on what I was going through in my life. I built a team of support around me, and I just reached 80 pounds released. My business has changed. My opportunities of where I'm working, what I'm doing has changed. My location of where I'm living has changed to my dream location, and everything changed again. But in a magical way. It's not easy facing yourself in that. It's actually a lot harder than what someone else has done to you. But I think that I had the tools and I had the space, and the timing was right, because I'm so committed to sharing that you guys are so possible no matter what your hardest things are in your life. And at 50, I was pissed at God, and I never realized how pissed I was at God, and beyond anger. I mean, I'm talking like ripping F-bomb rage. And I went into this rant one night of like, I'm just going to F-bomb and say everything that I feel like saying out loud about what I'm pissed at. And I raged at God for over an hour, F-bombing all the things like, why did you have a mom that was a teenager that didn't really want me? And why did I have to grow up in an alcoholic house? Why was I abused? And why was I this and that? And my husband this and all these things. And I just went on and on and on and on for a very, very long time, until I had no tears left. My eyes wanted to cry, but there was nothing left to come out. And then I sat there breathing and calming myself. And I had worked myself up into quite a tiz at that point. Literally threw things around my room, because I promised myself I was just going to let myself let it out. And when I got to that point of there's nothing left for me to let out, I've laid it all out energetically into this room, and I am now sitting with all of it. I started breathing and breath work just as a natural response to slow myself down. And what came to me was so profound. It was, I don't know, the voice of God, the inner knowing, whatever you want to call it, but it was this voice that I heard from within me. And it was like, I brought you through all of those things so that you could understand the languages of the people that are waiting to hear from you so that you can speak to them in the way that they can hear you.
Wow, that
And
is
I just
amazing.
dropped and cried, like in the fetal position. Like, why me? Why? So many things that one person experienced in their lifetime, that one of them would have cracked somebody. And then I carried all of them. But then I realized in those words that I wasn't carrying it anymore. It wasn't a burden. It wasn't something on my back, that they were gifts that had created me to who I am today and had given me the ability, the insight, and the languages to be the beacon of light to show other people the way out. And that was overwhelming.
That is just amazing. And I know that for whoever is going to listen to your journey, there are so many pearls of wisdom that you have created or have shared with us. But what I keep hearing is never give up.
No.
If you know it's not right at this moment, try something else. Reach out, go inside, do whatever it takes. And I say each and every day, life happens. SHIT happens.
Mhm.
And we're only human. We're not robots. So I have to be a warrior for myself every day. And I have to know what's going on inside. And if it feels off, then it's me that has to choose. And you were so in touch all the time. So whenever you felt this is not working, you continued to search and to try and to do and never gave up. And through your journey, you now have the opportunity to heal and help so many people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just beautiful. So I want to thank you so much. It was such a
Thank
pleasure. I
you.
mean, it wasn't an easy story to listen to, but
No.
really, um, it really warms my heart to see where you are today and how many people you're able to help. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Jess,
Thank you.
and you have a blessed day.
You too. All
Bye
of
bye.